The cars leave the pit lane ready for the final race in this year's Fanatec GT2 European Series. It has been an all-new class of GT car, it has been an all-new championship, and it has given us plenty of drama along the way. And we come to another night race, one of which we had at Misano, and here again at Paul Ricard into the darkness with the championship on the line. It's going to be fought out between the Audis of Anders Fjordbach, Mark Patterson, and of Bert Longin and Peter Gulinks. Anders Fjordbach and Mark Patterson are very much the drivers to beat because they come here with the championship advantage. But if it all goes wrong, then Bert Longin and Peter Gulinks can strike. It's a 5.822 kilometre long circuit, is Paul Ricard here at Le Castellet, and the race into the darkness. 50 minutes in length, mandatory pit stops between 20 and 30, 93 seconds line to line. Driver changes for most cars, but not all. And it is going to be a race of, certainly for many of the cars, changing pace as much as changing fortunes, because you'll have a quicker driver doing the opening stint, whereas the slower driver, will do the second. The grid is based not on the results of race one, but on the time set in the second part of qualifying yesterday by the drivers that will do the starting stint. We've had one race already, which was won by Christoph Ullrich. He's already the AM champion, and he therefore went on to make history by being the first AM driver to win a race outright. So it was a really good job done by Christoph Ullrich earlier on in the day in his KTM. Rather less fortunate was Michael Vergers, who was involved in an incident with Sedi Samini. Now, this was coming onto the pit straight. Sedi Samini shifted up rather than down, or down rather than up in the gearbox, and ended up slowing rather than accelerating out of the corner. Vergers had nowhere to go except into the back of him. Well, he tried to steer around him, and as he was steering, clipped the back of the KTM. That broke the car's suspension, but Vergers didn't know that until he got to the end of the pit straight. Then he braked and tried to turn, and the left front wheel was doing absolutely nothing. So the car went straight on at high speed into the barrier. Now, that's very bad luck for Michael Vergers. There's so much runoff here. You've got to be very unlucky to find a barrier. Vergers did it. Did a lot of damage to the front of Aurelius Rustica's Porsche. The team has been working incredibly hard to try to get that car ready for race two. Vergers himself has hurt his wrist in the impact, and the car making its way there to the grid is a quite Herculean task. Well done to everybody involved in that to get the car out on track. The Speed Factory Racing Squad has done an amazing job. Yes, the front of the car doesn't quite match the livery of the rest, but hey, it is on the grid, and that's very, very important indeed. Pole position Anders Fjordbach, and this time around the high-class racing team need to be absolutely sure that they get to the grid, because they missed the pit lane opening times last time around, and Mark Patterson had to start the opening race from the pit lane. The last few cars will make their way possibly to squeeze out one more lap onto the grid, and then we'll get set for the countdown to 50 minutes of racing here. We're about 10 minutes or so away from the race getting underway as the last few cars come to the grid, including number 63. Now, that is going to be Julien Piguet to start. Julien had retired from race one, was out of the car, he'd walked away, and then a lap later Vergers had his accident, and so the result went back a race, and it put Julien Piguet second and a class winner. Anders Fjordbach was a slightly furious Fjordbach, because it meant that he lost a class win, which he inherited, taking it on the road, but by going back a lap, so he lost out, and therefore effectively lost 7 points rather than 25 for a win. He got 18 for second in class, and at the moment, over Bert Longin and Peter Gulinks, every point matters. David Addison trackside as the cars make their way up to the grid. So Christoph Ullrich, a winner earlier on in the day, and Cedric Leimer and Julien Piguet taking second, but class winners earlier on in the day as well. That meant that Fjordbach and Patterson took third overall after the pit lane start, fourth to Bert Longin and Peter Gulinks, fifth Chris Rosenberger and Hans Stuck, second in AM, and sixth to Jaromir Jirik and Hailin Han, third in the AM class in their Target Racing Lamborghini. So the cars into position on the grid. As I say, this is a grid based on the standalone qualifying session, and it puts Anders Fjordbach onto pole. Oddly, it puts Hans Stuck last on the grid, Stuckey having had a drama in the qualifying session. He did get out and do a lap, but it was a slow lap, and we wait for the last few cars there to put themselves into position. David Brabham's Brabham is not yet there. It makes a great noise, the Brabham, as you will no doubt hear. 88, Luca Piri in the car that he shares with Stefan Rattel. That car is there on the grid, and Stefan walks to the front of it, now around to the side to wish his neighbour, as well as co-driver Luca Piri, good fortune for this race. And also, as Christoph Ulrich's car rolls into position, that's going to be second on the grid. Christoph now with 6 wins this year, 3 on his own, 3 with a co-driver. But he's become, if you like, an AM+. Done a very, very good job indeed this season. And that car rolled back into position, ready for the start of the race. As into its rank now comes the Audi of Anders Fjordbach. That's pole position. So Fjordbach is there. And the high-class racing Audi, which has done a very, very good job all season. Won at Monza, won both Hockenheim races, won 1 at Misano, missed out at Spa. Largely a legacy of a rare error by Anders Fjordbach in the free practice session. He went off at La Source and did quite a lot of damage that meant that the car could not take part in either of the qualifying sessions, and it put it at the back of the grid for both of the races. But they still banked points. One of the wins at Spa, Peter Gulinks and Bert Langevin, before a broken valve spring hobbled the progress in race 2. They had to get out and crawl round for points, but if they'd have gone at full pace, the engine would have probably blown. The other race at Spa won by Sedi Samini with Stefan Rossiner, and Sedi Samini on his own here today lines up 10th on the grid for this race. And then we've had the KTM of Christoph Ulrich being an outright winner earlier on in the day. There is the Brabham, which David Brabham will start, the Le Mans winner. So the BT63, a new car, and David, with his many, many years of experience in sports cars, endurance racing, is going to do the opening stint. And then it will be Dennis Anderson, another experienced driver, as the AM, if you like, in that Pro-Am combination, that will bring home the car. Grid now starting to be cleared. '81 is going to be started by Bert Langevin. Bert, who has been racing GT cars for many, many years now. There aren't many things he doesn't know about them. He's been a mainstay of the old FIA GT Championship of Belcar, in which he still races with a prototype. He's raced in the Euro NASCAR Series, multiple Zolder 24 Hours winner. '88, Luca Piri, he will go first. Italian GT racer, again, Euro NASCAR racer, International GT Open, Grand Am, FIA GT, you name it. Luca Piri, very experienced driver, the Italian, and he is in '88 lining up 5th on the grid. Ahead of him is the Brabham, as you see. David Brabham at the helm of it for the opening stint, the Le Mans winner for Peugeot back in 2009. '63, Julien Piguet will start. Its problems rectified from race 1. Julien, who has raced in pretty much everything, whether it's been single-seaters or saloons or GT cars over the year, from historic Group C to Renault Clios, Formula Renault, Formula 3 and the World Endurance Championship in between. And Julien Piguet will do the opening stint in number 63 Lamborghini before giving way to Cedric Lima, double Lamborghini Super Trofeo champion, raced also in French GT as well as the old GT Sports Club competition as well. So just looking down onto the grid, I think everybody is present and correct. We've lost, since the earlier race, the sole Ferrari that was in the entry, the car that was J.M. Littmann and Luca De Marchi's car, that had a sensor problem that couldn't be rectified by the Scuderia Ravetto and Roberti team, so that's been withdrawn. We'd lost a couple of cars after dramas in free practice and qualifying as well, but even so, 13 strong, 16 entries was the biggest of the season, which shows that with a lot of effort, the GT2 concept is working and will continue to grow. And so now we are ready for the formation lap, ready for the final round of the championship. The race director, in the absence of normal race director, the regular race director, Peter Daly, who's recovering from illness. Get well soon, Peter. It is Alain Adon and his assistant. Abby Hay is there with the green flag as the assistant race director to wave the cars away, whilst the team in race control concentrates on making sure that everything is underway properly for the formation lap. The leading car blasts away, the lights go green, the flag is waved then, so the cars release from the line, accelerate away now. little bit slow away, in fairness, Luca Piri. Now, does that suggest that the car's got a problem? Because everybody's gone streaming past, which you necessarily shouldn't do, but hopefully Luca Piri will get up to speed. Let's see. If he falls to the back of the pack, he's going to have to stay there by rights, but let's just keep an eye to that when they get to the end of the formation lap. This is how they did line up then, with Anders Fjord back on pole position and Christoph Ullrich with him at the front of the grid. Then it is David Brabham starting third and Bert Longchamp fourth, ahead of Luca Piri and Julien Piguet, with Michael Verger's repaired Porsche starting seventh and Mara Casadei with Stefan Larsen starting 8th. Cyril Leimer is 9th on the grid ahead of Sedi Sarmini, then Han Hui Lin 11th with Leonardo Gurini 12th, and the last car is the KTM that Hans Stuck starts and will give way in to Chris Rosenberger at the driver changes. So the cars now turning their way down towards the approach of the Mistral. There's Leonardo Gurini going through, Hans Stuck behind him. And I think I'm right in saying that Luca Piri has caught his way back up again. We shall see. So at the end of this formation lap, if the race director is happy, then Alain Adon will release the cars, we'll go racing. The pit window between 20 and 30 minutes. The pit stop has to be 93 seconds, not 92.9, but 93 seconds plus line to line. The pit in line to the pit out. And in that you will do the driver change, or if you're a soloist, stay in the car. So the cars now make the run up towards the Chicane Nord. And there you see the Brabham. It makes the most fantastic noise. We'd like lots more of those for next year, please. The cars then, with Michael Vergers in the Porsche, set to go racing. And of course, this is a bit of a step into the unknown for Verg. He has not had a chance, other than the lap to the grid, to drive the car. You don't get any extra testing, for example, no hardship lap. That car repaired, and it's now, fingers crossed, that it's all okay. But the best news of all is that Verg is okay, because it was a really big impact and a sudden stop into the barriers. Course car at the back, medical car ready to stop at an incident on the opening lap of the race, should it be required, which obviously we hope it won't be. And largely this year, driving standards have been very, very good. We've had precious few silly incidents, and as they come out of the right-hander of Le Bourset now, one to watch in this opening stint undoubtedly is going to be David Brabham, because with all of that experience, you'd have thought that David should go storming into the race lead, and that's going to set up that car for a really interesting second race, if indeed that is the case. Luca Piri in 88 will be another one to watch after his delays off the grid. Hopefully that car is okay now. And I think I'm right in saying, just looking at this, that Luca Piri is going to have to start from the back. Yes, so there is a gap where he was, and you can see there Luca Piri is going to start last. He has lined up, good understanding of the rules from Luca Piri, alongside Hans Stuck, because everybody had gone past him off the line. So as the car struggled away, Luca Piri gives up what was 5th on the grid to effectively now start on the 14th rank. Gives him a little bit more work to do in the opening stint of the race, and the opening stint is about to get underway, because the cars then now make that run up towards the Virage du Pont. The lights on the gantry are red, and as the field accelerates up towards the line, Anders Fjord back on pole position, gets ready to accelerate away. Lights are red, lights are green, we go racing, and it is Anders Fjord back then who floors the throttle from pole position. A championship to be won here. As long as he's ahead of the Longchamp and Gulink's car, then he's good for the title with Mark Patterson, and he's in the box seat then as they accelerate down towards turn 1. It's the Audi that leads the way. So Fjordback has the advantage, and drama straight away. Christoph Ullrich has been turned around. I think he got involved with the Brabham, didn't he? Because David seemed to have been delayed in all of that as well. But Christoph Ullrich, a winner earlier on in the afternoon, facing the wrong way at turn 2 then, as the leader, Anders Fjordback, comes down towards the foot of the lap into turn 5 here. The Virage du Camp, it looks like it's Bert Longchamp second. Michael Vergers there getting run out wide, as up on the inside line, trying to battle through the traffic. Comes the number 19 Lamborghini, that's Cyril Leimer's car. So there's been a bit of a shuffle around on this opening. That David Brabham has certainly dropped back, lost a lot of places, as the cars now sprint their way up towards the Mistral straight. Vergers in the Porsche goes a little bit wide, and that allows David Brabham to get up and past him. But Anders Fjordbach it is that leads the way, but Christoph Ulrich has yet to get to the end of the first sector after that spin. So drama for him as the cars then now accelerate their way up towards the Chicane Nord for the first time of asking, and it is Fjordbach clearing the lead. Second is Longchamp, third is Piguet, but Anders Fjordbach now trying to build and build and build that lead. The dramas of turn one have certainly shuffled things around a little bit as the cars now accelerate their way up through Senior. The Brabham howling its way through, but Anders Fjordbach commanding things up front as the cars come out of Le Beausset now. Of course, in the darkness, it's very different to find your reference points from what it was like earlier on in the day for the mid-afternoon or early afternoon race. Leonardo Gurini then coming up towards the Virage du Lac, coming under attack as this is a replay of the start. Now let's try and piece together what happened to Ulrich. He was on the outside of the front row, so as he came into turn one, was there contact? Yes, he got turned around by, it wasn't the Brabham because he'd already lost places. It might have been Bert Longchamp, in fact, or Julien Piguet, possibly Piguet, because they were the two trying to come up from the second and third rows of the grid, Longchamp and Piguet. If there's anything for the race officials to have a look at, they will notify the teams. But in the meantime, at the end of lap one, it is Fjordbach leading the way by 3 seconds already from Bert Longchamp, and Longchamp is under attack from Julien Piguet. So, as far as the championship is concerned, if Bert Longchamp and Peter Gulinx want to win it, and they do, they've got to win the race. There's no argument about that. They have to win, with Fjordbach and Patterson being 7th or lower. There's only 8 starters in the Pro-Am class, so it really is, you could argue, a formality, but they've got to finish the race, Fjordbach and Patterson, and Anders Fjordbach is going the right way about not only finishing it, but winning it by a big, big margin, and that is Christoph Ulrich, who is out of the KTM with the bodywork deliberately, of course, pushed up and forward. But Christoph Ulrich, disappointing way to end what's been a stellar season for the AM champion, out without even a lap completed here in this night race at Paul Ricard. So there is Christoph Ulrich. He's okay, but the incident involving that car noted by race control. They'll have a look at it and see whether it was one of those things. Of course, turn one is always a pinch point, and you do that in the darkness, it's going to be even more so. The race leader is away and gone. Second and third, Fjordbach and Longchamp, ahead of Piguet and Cedric Limer's car. Brabham through lower down now. David Brabham badly delayed on that first lap. He is 9th. Leonardo Gurini under attack in the meantime from the Lamborghini. Now that's Mauro Casadei behind him. Two very experienced Italian GT racers of seasons past and present. Leonardo Guarini's Porsche carrying the early 80s worked colours. Of course, the different but equally familiar colour scheme adorning the car of Aurelius Rustiker and Michael Vergers, which is a little bit further back in 11th place. End of the lap though, Fjordbach goes through, best lap of the race thus far, and he has just lapped over 3 seconds quicker than Bert Longchamp. Fjordbach either is incredibly good and or has a better setup on his Audi, because he just makes the car do things that the Longchamp the PK Car Sport entry cannot do. Piguet is still third, Gurini is fourth, and Sedi Sarmini now goes over the line in fifth. Does he ahead of Mauro Casadei and then Cedric Limer? Yep, there are the two Lamborghinis together, so Casadei delayed coming out of the last corner, seemingly. So Anders Fjordbach presses on up front. And here, 24, Hans Stuck presses on. Now, Stucky, double Le Mans winner, no stranger to nighttime racing, is pressing on in pursuit of the Lamborghini ahead of him. That's Han Hui-Lin at the wheel of number 32. So Stucky started the lap in 9th place, and in fact, two that have dropped back. David Brabham down to 11th. He's losing place after place, having started third on the grid, possibly with damage picked up at the start. But the other one is Luca Piri. Piri 12th, and has not really made progress, has he, from the back of the grid? So clearly, all is not well for the 88 Audi as well, the LP racing car. We are going to end up, I fear, with a few walking wounded in this race. Those that are healthy are having some good fights as 24, Hans Stuck goes through on the tail now of Cyril Limer. So Stucky working his way forward. Michael Vergers next in the queue. So there, the cars come up through Senior on now towards Le Beausset. Out of shot goes Leonardo Gurini. That's Sadi Samini pushing on, but Samini has dropped back a place. Mauro Casadei is ahead of him. Retakes the spot. So the Lamborghini goes back up one place as the teams look on in the pit bunkers. So the race leaders up towards the completion of lap number 3. That incident at the start is being looked at by race control, but it's going to be hard really perhaps to get many more views in the darkness of that. As Anders Fjordbach goes through, does another fastest lap of the race, 2 minutes 6.5. In the first race, the fastest lap was done by Fjordbach at 2 minutes 5.7. He's not a million miles off that even in the darkness, is he? Of course, it's cooler now as well, but your visibility not as good, your reference points not as easy to find. Leonardo Gurini goes through 4th, 5th Mauro Casadei. Replay here. Cars pouring their way up through Virage du Lac towards Virage du Pont, and that was running out wide. Cyril Lima and Hans Stuck getting up and past him. So the KTM passes the Lamborghini. The KTM, a low-cost, relatively speaking, way of going GT2 racing against some of the real prestige supercar brands. That's not to say don't buy an Audi or a Porsche or a Lamborghini, but KTM have found a different way of attacking the GT2 proposition. Stuck goes through. And this replay shows Vergers coming up to have a go as well at Cyril Lima. And Michael Vergers wasn't quite ahead when they crossed the line, but he was by the end of the pit straight. But Anders Fjordbach is already nearly 10 seconds ahead of Bert Langin after just 3 laps of the race. Bert Langin and Peter Gulinks have shown good pace on occasions this year, but largely that high-class racing Audi of Anders Fjordbach and Mark Patterson, experienced and quick drivers both, has been the better of the two cars. It's always looked the stronger, and it's always had good pace, and Fjordbach particularly, often in a different league. He's done another absolute best in the first sector as there, under attack. Sadi Samini goes on the prowl against Mauro Casadei for 5th and 6th places now. So those two turn through together. Out wide goes Mauro Casadei. Mauro, who is not only an experienced racer, but also these days part of the Lamborghini employment, and has done a very good job of talking up GT2 to his customers. Another big supporter of Stefan Rattel's categories and his racing over the years, Mauro Casadei. He's worked with Pirelli to supply tires for them. He's worked with Lamborghini to supply cars and teams and drivers. And when possible, having tempted another customer into GT2, comes and drives with them. And Mauro Casadei had a win with Cedric Lima back at Misano in the summer. So down towards turn 1 has already gone. Fjordbach has gone. Langin, Julien Piguet there, 3rd. Leonardo Gurini running in 4th place. There he is in the Porsche. Gap back to 5th, Mauro Casadei, not staying with him because he's a bit busy trying to defend now from Sadi Samini, who turns through. 7th is Han Hui-Lin, 8th is Stuckey, and then Vergers is ahead of Cyril Lima now for 9th and 10th places, with David Brabham in 11th. And I'm just wondering whether that car is going to get to the end of the race, because clearly it has suffered in a legacy, a bit of contact at turn 1, but it's just not making progress. And Luca Piri now comes up to have a go. There is Piri on the outside. Here are two cars that should be much, much higher up the order. Luca Piri, with a problem, has got ahead of David Brabham. So I'm afraid to say the BT63, good as it sounds, is losing out massively in terms of pace, whereas this car is definitely not. Anders Fjordbach is away and gone up front. 13 seconds to the good now, and a championship beckons. So the race leaders continue to push on as Anders Fjordbach turns his way through Le Beausset. 10 minutes gone. Now, the pit window is in another 10 minutes and lasts for 10 minutes, but you can anticipate that Fjordbach will do the bulk of the work. That's a car that never made it into the race because Hubert Trunkenpolz had an off yesterday in the car, the KTM that he would share with Klaus Angerhofer, so that was withdrawn. And another one that we lost was the Jens Liebhauser Stinas Langin, Bert Langin's son's Piquet Carsport Audi, because Jens Liebhauser put that off in FP1 right at the start of the weekend and did damage to it. So with a damaged chassis, there was nothing that could be done for that car either. So big frustration that cars were lost even before we went into racing earlier on today. Anders Fjordbach has crossed the line. This is the 3rd place car coming down to the last corner. That gives you an idea of how good Fjordbach is. He's done another best lap of the race, a 2 minutes 6.1, as he gets ever closer to the earlier fastest lap of the race. He's only about 4/10 off what he did in race 1, therefore. Hans Stuck here comes up to have another go at the traffic, easily gets past Han Hoi-Lin, put the pressure on. But this is Stucky's kind of race, isn't it? A circuit where you've got to be brave, because there are some fast sections to it, and in the darkness. And Hans Stuck, the Austrian, a member of the British Racing Drivers Club, a real hero no matter what he's raced over the years, be it Formula 1 cars, touring cars, sports cars. He was part of that Rothmans Porsche attack to win Le Mans twice, comes over the line, and Hans Stuck now is up to 3rd in class. They've not yet had a win in the AM competition, Hans Stuck and his co-driver Chris Rosenberger, and this would be the perfect and perhaps rightful way to round out the season. As predicted, the Brabham limps into the pit lane. David Brabham brings it in, so it's been getting slower and slower. Whatever the problem is has manifested itself, and that car heading to the pit lane, if they can get it back out, it's worth going out to gain the data for the development of the Brabham BT63, this great sounding, normally aspirated 5.4 litre car, but it's into the pit road. So they're going through the 2nd and 3rd place battle, and Julien Piguet picking up his skirts, as it were, now, going after Batlangin. He's pulled back another few tenths within the first sector. On the last lap, he was about 6 tenths quicker, so certainly Piguet in that Lamborghini is showing intent. Up towards the right of Signes they go now. There's the Brabham, and it might be able to go back out, but not convinced. So there goes the 81 PK Car Sport entry, and you can see behind, still pushing, Julien Piguet. But in the darkness, it's harder to make a move. You can apply pressure, but Batlangin has done enough 24-hour races to know how to race at night. He's been a winner at Spa, winner at Zolder. Comes up towards the line once again, and as the headlights come past the pits, Anders Fjordback's already gone by another 2 minutes 6.1 as he continues to pound in good laps here. Race leaders go by down towards turn 1. So Anders Fjordback, the race leader, now by 22.8 seconds. If anything, the question's now going to be, how many cars can he put a lap on before he gets into the pit window? It's perhaps not quite as easy as that, because it's a long lap here, so Anders Fjordback is still pressing on. But that car well clear of anybody else. It's an engine drama, we understand, for the Brabham. So David Brabham has popped and banged his way into the pit lane. Whether or not that can be cured, I rather doubt, but the team working on it, see what can be done, if anything. That brings, of course, Cyril Leimer back up to 9th at the expense of Michael Vergers. It puts Luca Piri into 11th, and therefore, for the moment, David Brabham back on track, hopefully seeing what they might have been able to do to cure the problem. Go out and test the car. Christoph Ulrich, the one retirement we've had then from the 13 starters, are still 2nd and 3rd run together. We are about 5 minutes and change away from the pit window opening here. Through they turn. Nose to tail, 2nd and 3rd. Another battle pack here. Has the Porsche of Michael Vergers at the back of it. He's on the tail of Cyril Leimer, who's on the tail of Han Hoi-Lin. Race leader into the 2 minute 5s now then, as Anders Fjordback breaks the beam. 2 minutes 5.8. He's a 10th shy of what he did earlier on in the day in the daylight. So it's a mighty impressive effort, this, by Anders Fjordback. And new lap record beckons as Langin and Piguet battle on for 2nd and 3rd places. The Audi fends off the Lamborghini. Up towards the timing line they come now. Past the pits once more, and that margin between the two of them is just about 0.3 of a second. So Piguet running out of ideas here as to what he can do, but he is pushing, that's for sure. '81 rattles over the curb. Langin comes down through turns 3 and 4. the pressure being applied all the time. In the old days, you could say that the lights were a real distraction behind. Well, they might be in the mirrors, but of course these days, with the back of the car so enclosed, as the Brabham is back into the pit lane, the rear view mirror effectively is a little television screen that you look at. So it's a slightly different way of having to cope with the lights from behind. Think back to old touring car races, you have lots of sticky tape on the rear windscreens to try and shield some of that glare. That's Sedi Sarmini off the road. Big problem for the KTM. Sedi Sarmini's car, by the look of it, has gone straight on, and that could well have been a breakage that has caused that. Tries to reverse, but how's he got there? A long, long way off the racetrack. Sedi Sarmini, did he get there with any help? It was Hans Stuck that was behind him. Let's see. This is down, approaching Saint-Baume. Stuck goes to the inside line. Yeah, Sarmini was thinking of coming back onto his line, and as he turned towards the line, Stuck was already there. They bounced off one another, and that brings out a yellow flag down at Saint-Baume. So Sedi Sarmini's car might need retrieving here. Nope, he's found a gear finally, and assuming nothing is broken, will be able to steer away from the incident zone, but it cost him time. Sedi Sarmini, regular KTM racer in the crossbow battle, gets moving again, falls behind Luca Piri, blends back onto the racetrack as the race leaders now work their way down again towards a change for second place. Piguet dives through, brakes glowing, and he gets ahead of Bert Langevin. That was down towards the Virage du Pont, end of the lap, and Piguet has finally done it, seizes the opportunity, goes through, and straight away scorches clear of the Audi. Anders Feuerbach has just done the best lap of either race, 2 minutes 5.5, quicker in the dark than he went in the daylight. So Anders Feuerbach then continues to pull away. He's over half a minute clear of the opposition. Piguet up to second then, Langevin third, Gurini is fourth, Mauro Casadei is fifth, and here's another look at Julien Piguet's really committed move from almost nowhere. He dives up the inside and goes through. So through goes Julien Piguet, and the incident between Sedi Sarmini and Hans Stuck has been noted by race control, but Julien Piguet in the meantime is pushing to see what can be done about reducing that deficit to Anders Feuerbach. It's a big ask, but that said, Julien Piguet is an experienced driver. Clearly Sarmini has got problems because the car is keeping off the racetrack. So I think Sedi Sarmini, if he does get to the pit lane, he's going to head there and possibly stay there. As for the moment, second and third go through with Bert Langevin then having fallen away behind Julien Piguet, set to fall further away, I fear now. So there through is the Audi of Anders Feuerbach. There's going to be at least one more lap before he can even think about the pit window, but he will probably stay out for as many laps as he can within that 10-minute period. Another 3, 4, maybe even 5 he can squeeze out of it, 4 to be safe, before he gives way to Mark Patterson, because Anders is the quicker of the two. So maximise the time from your faster driver. Anders Feuerbach then, out of turn 2. The advantage that he's got, still can't tell you because we are awaiting anybody else to come by. There, and it can only be a suspension or steering breakage, can't it, that's causing Sedi Sarmini to struggle on like this. So that contact with Hans Stuck had a rather more serious effect than you might have first thought, but the car limps on. There's an incident between Piguet and Langevin that's being looked at as well from turn 15, which is the Virage du Pont. Not quite sure they made contact. It was just a good dive, wasn't it, by Julien Piguet, but anyway, that's going to be looked at by race control as well. And the leader, Anders Feuerbach, is now trying to work out if he can get into the 2 minutes 4, such is his pace. The last lap that he did was a 2 minute 6, but the next one has got an absolute best in the first sector as he's well clear of anybody else. The pit window is now open, so the teams, if they want to, can bring in their drivers, but in the most cases it's the pro out of the Pro-Am combination that is in the car now, and therefore you want them to do as many laps as possible. There's 27 going through, which is the Mauro Casadei Lamborghini, and that Lamborghini in 5th place right now as he comes down through turn 5, the Virage du Camp, and up to Saint-Baume now in front of the huge grandstands erected for the French Grand Prix that returned to Paul Ricard a couple of years ago. Of course, this, if you like, a circuit that came back into usage because it was closed to racing for many, many years. It was purely a high-speed test track, and then gradually change of emphasis, change of ownership, change of ethos brought racing back, and ultimately it chased the French Grand Prix and was successful in doing so. But it was great to come here with the old Blancpain Endurance Series many, many years ago, and it's been a mainstay of the SRO calendar. This final round of the Fanatec GT2 European Series, part of the SRO Racing Festival. Sedi Sarmini parked by the side of the circuit, battle on here, because Hans Stuck's KTM getting closer and closer and closer to Mauro Casadei in the Lamborghini. So both of them in the AM contest, but Stucky pushing forward. Number 16 stationary by the side of the track, but in a safe position on the run up towards the Chicane Nord. So Sedi Sarmini with that breakage out of the race. In a sense, that doesn't really help the race officials looking at the move against Stuck, because now it wasn't just contact, it was contact enough to force the retirement of a car. Lead gap, 38 seconds, as you see on the timing tower. So Anders Fjordbach, it's almost indecent, that margin, isn't it, as he just drives away from everybody else. Fjordbach, with all of the experience of racing in the World Endurance Championship, racing at Le Mans, racing in the dark, it's being put to good use, and that car storms through. Cyril Leimer, number 19 Lamborghini, into the pit lane. Now Cyril Leimer is a soloist, so he will stay behind the wheel of that car. There he is, comes in. He's another of the AMs as well. So down the pit road comes then the Lamborghini. Anders Fjordbach, race leader, still with the fastest lap of the race to his name. Now, Julien Piguet, interestingly, having got himself up into second, has done a personal best lap. So Piguet certainly lapping quicker than Langevin, and irrespective of where Langevin finishes, if Fjordbach wins, it's the championship to Anders and Mark Patterson, no question about that. So Mauro Casadei goes through, still sixth, Hans Stuck chasing after him. They are currently third and fourth within the AM battle. And the car's making that run once again up towards the chicane. Stuck to the inside line, brakes as late as he dares, gets alongside Casadei and goes through. So Hans Stuck has done it, he's pulled off the move, he has gone into sixth, and he's up to third in the class. The leaders go now through Senior once more. But Anders Fjordbach with a championship set to be his. That car that's had 4 victories this year, one at Monza, 2 at Hockenheim, another at Misano, which was in early July. It's actually been a long time since the last win, because they didn't score at Spa in terms of a victory, and they've missed out in race 1 at Paul Ricard, whether it was overall or even in the class. But Anders Fjordbach perhaps thinking there's no better way to win a championship than to win the race, and that's exactly the mission at the moment. Hans Stuck then, having got himself up past Mauro Casadei, comes to the completion of the lap. Leonardo Gurini is the leading AM for LP Racing. Luca Piri has kept going despite his travails on the green flag lap, but that car does not show the pace that you would have anticipated from it, as the car of Hans Stuck goes through now. So Stucky by, and Mauro Casadei 4/10 behind him. So far, there's only Cyril Leimer that has made the regulation stop. David Brabham back into the pit lane, and there the car has stayed. So it rather looks like that car's race is run with this engine issue. And as Fjordbach, he's on another mission. He might be getting to the end of his stint here, because Fjordbach's just done another absolute best in the middle sector. As you look at Hans Stuck's headlights coming towards us down through the approach to Virage du Camp, they come. Right on his tail, 27, Mauro Casadei trying to fight back, but Hans Stuck has the measure of him for the moment as the cars turn onto the Mistral once again. On they blast, up now towards the Chicane Nord. Leonardo Gurini up front. Stucky's last lap slightly slower, and Gorini's pace can go to the end because there's no co-driver in that Porsche, whereas Chris Rosenberger will need to have a look at the lap times of relative to Leonardo Gurini in stint 2. So we trip into the second half of the race, 25 minutes gone in this 50-minute race, and only 4 minutes and 28 seconds of that pit window still to go, as in comes Luca Piri to give way to Stefan Rattel. So that car, after its problems at the start, Clearly not quite 100%, but it's still going. And Stefan will round out the season for that car as the 88 Audi stops on its marks. Stefan sprints around the side of the car, and out hops Luca Piri, seat adjusted. And the tall Frenchman Stéphane Rattel, the architect of modern-day GT racing, GT3, GT2, GT4, gets on board. Luca Piri leans in, making sure that all is well. But that car, you kind of get the feeling here, is on a bit of a damage limitation exercise for points because its absolute pace is not there. Michael Vergers, in the rebuilt Porsche, by the way, 8th currently. Also in as Kam-Han Stuck and also in as Kam-Bat Longchamp. So the pit lane's got a bit busier. And drama there. Is that a car that's... Is that the... Yeah, that looked like a car that might have stopped either coming into the pits or at the very top. But no, it can't be the Rattel car. So it was one come to grief coming into the pit lane. So away goes 88. Need to have another look at that pit-in shot. It looked as though there was some drama at pit-in itself. Down the pit road goes 88. So that's Stéphane Rattel getting into the race. That car rejoins. And there is the leader coming into the pit lane. So Anders Fjordbach is in. Gets the regulation pit speed. And pulling out in front is 81, which is now Peter Gulinks going into the race, and that slightly impedes Anders Fjordbach, who wants to get to his pit as quickly as possible, but Peter Gulinks ahead of his championship rival. And Anders Fjordbach finally gets to his pit box, which is at pit out end, and they're ready to leap round the side of the car. Mark Patterson, he'll get on board and then blast into the race. So Anders Fjordbach, exemplary stint, fastest lap of the race, says plural, hands over in the race lead. He can do no more. It is now up to Mark Patterson to bring home that car and to make sure that a championship is his. So on board, Mark Patterson is strapped in. Team timing the stop to make sure they know exactly when to release the car. Also in is Piguet, also in is Gurini, is Hoelin, is Vergers. So pretty much everybody now serving the stop because there's less than a lap time left in the window. Fire up the engine, Mark, says the mechanic. And has he got a problem? He might have a problem. So quickly, something is reset. Now the ignition fires and away he goes, but Mark Patterson seemingly couldn't get the thing started. It blasts into life and away he goes, but a moment of concern there, but the high-class racing squad on top of it sorts that out and sends him into the race. There is the Michael Vergers, Leonardo Gurini Porsche, the LP racing car. Leonardo Gurini, the soloist. So he will stay behind the wheel of that car as it gets set to leave the pit lane. Is he going to keep his class lead, will be the question. Away he goes. Down the pit lane. The pseudo Rothmans colours adorning the Porsche. Set to, in a moment or three, blast out. He's got a long crawl down the pit lane to go first of all. Right, Patterson and Piguet back on track. 20 minutes of the race remain. And there is the number 911 that comes back onto the circuit. Now replay here of the earlier incident between, let's see, the Lamborghini there dives up the inside, clips the curb. That's number 19, isn't it? Which is the Cyril Lima car going ahead of Peter Gulinks. That looks okay. So another bold pass by a Lamborghini, good on the brakes at the last corner. So Mark Patterson thrown in at the deep end in a way here. There's the leading car. It's now pitch black. Go off and win the race and win the championship, Mark. But the South African driver who's done a lot of racing in America over the years, is indeed in charge up front as he turns then through Le Beausset. And he's on that loud pedal now, coming up through the approach to Bandor and then onto the Virage de Lac. But the Audi just looking unstoppable at the moment. This car so strong, so competitive. Through he turns, and Mark Patterson is about to complete lap number 14 of the race, his out lap effectively, with 18 3/4 minutes on the clock, and he comes through now. Now in second place was Julien Piguet. This is Stéphane Rattel, who is going to be into the top 10. Part of that is because others have retired, but equally this car has a chance of gaining ground in the second stint as Stéphane accelerates up towards the timing line now then. So 88 Audi. It's going to be a lap down, is it not, after Luca Pires travails in that first stint, but through goes Stéphane. So yes, that car has fallen off the lead lap now. Goes by Julien Piguet. Half a minute is the margin. In fact, not Julien Piguet anymore, but Cédric Lima. So Cédric Lima is second, and it's going to be an interesting task now to see what he can do, if anything, about Mark Patterson. At the end of the next lap, we'll see what flying lap times can be offered up by Mark and by Cédric Lima. Stéphane Rattel, in the meantime, holding on to that 10th place. Leonardo Gurini goes through third, Cyril Lima is fourth, Peter Gulinx is fifth, third in class, but it's just not enough. Unless 33 retires, that's their championship. In sixth place should be Jaromir Jirik's Lamborghini, and then Aurelius Rustiker has fallen behind Chris Rosenberger on the pit stop, so the Porsche behind the KTM. 17 minutes are on the clock. It was a red flag that stopped play a couple of minutes early in the first race after Michael Verger's accident. And there the field up towards the chicane Nord. You've got 63 Cédric Lima then running in second place. Now, he is quicker in the first sector. So Cédric Lima hanging on to the place. Still being showed on the timing screen as Julien Piguet. Now, we weren't told that Cédric Lima wouldn't be driving, so let's assume that Cédric has taken over and it's just a glitch on the timing system, but that might just need double checking, because the pace is very good. 1 second plus quicker in the first sector, 1 second plus quicker in the second sector. Has a kind of Piguet feel to it, with all due deference to Cédric Lima. So there's the flying Lamborghini. Towards the timing line, Mark Patterson's Audi goes through. The Piguet Lima Lamborghini breaks the beam, and see what the margin is in a moment. It's 29.3 seconds, so the Lamborghini quicker in each of the sectors. It is now being shown to Cédric Lima, so in fairness to Cédric, it's a good effort on an outlap that to get himself into the mix relative to Mark Patterson. I don't necessarily know that he can make up 29 seconds in 15 minutes, but this might be that Mark Patterson is just driving to bank the points. Doesn't have to be flat out, but Cédric Lima certainly is giving it a red-hot go on his outlaps, that's for sure. Gurini third, leading in AM from Cyril Lima, and then third in the class, Jaromir Jirik, ahead of Chris Rosenberger. But Mark Patterson then is, again, slower by 9/10 within the first sector alone here. That gap is coming down, no question about it. So the lights through the darkness. There is Chris Rosenberger in the KTM, the former rally man. And behind, you've got, by the look of it, Jaromir Jirik's Lamborghini. So that's a place that has changed. That's sixth, and that means that Rosenberger is ahead now. So Chris Rosenberger has gone through. Jaromir Jirik falls back behind him. And Mark Patterson's advantage down again in the middle sector by 8/10, so 9/10 in sector 1, 8/10 in sector 2. No question that that is a tumbling gap, but I think Mark's going to be just about okay to hang on in there. '32 goes through. Jaromir Jirik, having taken over from Han Hoi Lin. Now the leaders have gone through and the margin is down to 26.5 seconds, and another second plus pull back within the last sector. So Lima is absolutely on a mission, no question about it. That is Leonardo Gurini, who has not had an AM win. He's only joined in at Spa, in fairness, and the Porsche going really nicely here. And here's more to the plot. Number 63, a 2-second time penalty. It was short on the pit stop, so even though the lap times are good, Cedric Lima being given a 2-second time penalty. Pit stop too short. So Lima will drop away, but he won't lose a place because he's 9 seconds up on Leonardo Gurini. Gurini might come under attack though before the end by Cyril Lima. There goes Stefan Rattel, who, as I say, is a lap down. That car's pace is clearly hobbled. Its best lap has been a 2:16, when you consider that the best lap of the race is a 2:05 and it's a comparable car. Clearly all is not well for the LP Racing entry, so big shame. But there Mark Patterson goes through. Now sector 1, 9/10 were lost. Sector 2, over a second and a bit was lost. So Cedric Lima has got the proverbial bit between his teeth right now, and he's hunting down the leader with 12 minutes still to go. Mark Patterson, of course, wants the championship as much as the race win. Cedric Lima not really part of the championship this year, so he can, to an extent, throw caution to the wind here. But Cedric is pushing on, and Cedric Lima can't think of a day when he raced anything other than a Lamborghini. Massively experienced in this type of car, and accelerates then up now towards the Virage Dupont approach. Leonardo Gurini hangs onto his class lead in the Porsche, and then Cyril Lima runs in 4th. Peter Gulick's 5th, Chris Rosenberger 6th, Jaromir Jirik 7th ahead of Aurelius Rustiker, Stefan Larsson, and then Stefan Rattel to round out the 10 that have survived. We lost Ulrich on the opening lap, Bradman with his engine dramas, and Sedi Sarmini after contact. That's the AM leader then. Leonardo Gurini goes through. Now it was 20 laps in 44 minutes in the first race because of that red flag, and they are onto lap 18 now. So the 50-minute race was stopped, as I said, a couple of minutes short. Go back a lap. That's where we got to, as the leaders then in the hands of Mark Patterson, the high-class racing Audi, clear of this car, but the margin continues to come down. So in the change of plan, a 2-second stop-and-go penalty for number 63 for the pit stop too short. It was a time penalty, and now that has been corrected to a 2-second stop-and-go penalty. Well, the stop-and-go is one part of it, but the real loss there is the drive time. So that does take Lima out of the hunt. I was about to tell you that he'd pull back a second and a half in the first sector, but it's all irrelevant now because Cedric Lima is going to be given a stop-and-go penalty. It's only 2 seconds of stop, but it's the going up and down the pit lane that is the big issue for him. So Cedric Lima's quest to catch Mark Patterson is going to come to naught. He's just taken 2 seconds out of Patterson in the middle sector, but it's all going to come to nothing with 10 minutes to go. So the race leader, Mark Patterson, currently is on his 18th lap, and he's clear, and he's going to be even more clear because it will be Leonardo Gurini to inherit second place, and Gurini could be on for a first-class win of the season and therefore also an outright podium for second overall, the way things are going. But you've got to feel a bit for Lima. You could argue it might have been his fault, too quick down the pit lane after the team released him, possibly. The team might have released him too soon. Either way, the pit stop is too short, and in he comes. This is where the 2-second stop and go has to be conducted in pit lane. But this is where it hits you. It's a long, long pit lane drive. So First of all, wriggle your way through that chicane. Now down the pit road, and down and down and down and down and down and down. Get to the team. Stop. There's the pit lane. Oh, that was a very, very short stop, wasn't it? But anyway, he's come in. It didn't really look as though the car actually stopped at all. It was more of a crawl. But anyway, the stop and go penalty box midway down the pit lane, and then there's the long drive down the other side. The danger here is that the adrenaline is such that you end up speeding in the pit lane and you get another penalty, but hopefully that won't hit Lima. Away he goes then. But that's going to put him, I think, behind Cyril Lima now. So Mark Patterson gets a get out of jail free card. Chris Rosenberger, by the way, up ahead of Peter Gulinks now. So the 81 Audi is another one that's fading for pace. There going through is back on track, Cedric Lima. So he's recovered to stay ahead of the lapped Audi of Rattel and stays ahead of Chris Rosenberger. So yeah, it's going to put him fourth, isn't it? Well, second, goes behind Gurini and Cyril Lima now. Chris Rosenberger on the par, up through the Saint-Baume right-hander, flicks left onto the Mistral. Speed building all the time here. 7 3/4 minutes still to go in this final round of the Fanatec GT2 European Series, a category new this year, and it's been a slow burn, but we've got a much better entry for this last round of the championship, and some good racing has been the result, no question about that. So the race leader, Mark Patterson, on lap number 19, goes through. All he has to do is bring it home now. Doesn't have to be a hero, doesn't have to go for a lap record, doesn't have to try and overtake anything. He just has to tick off the laps, not make mistakes is the key to all of this, and the championship will be his. Now for second place, Leonardo Gurini goes through. Guarini's, gosh, last lap was nearly 5 seconds quicker than Patterson. Mark is being very, very cautious, that is for sure. But even if Gurini caught him, that doesn't matter, because he is so far ahead of anybody else in class, he could let the next couple of cars go, because they're AMs, it wouldn't affect his points haul. Chris Rosenberger here hustles on, third in the AMs, goes through. But Leonardo Gurini, if he can take 5 seconds a lap out of him, he would need 4 laps. That he won't get, but it's going to be really interesting to see how Leonardo Gurini gets on here before the very end of the race. Chris Rosenberger then still hunting his way through the traffic, getting quicker and quicker as the fuel load comes down. Just on that previous lap did a personal best first sector. 6 minutes on the clock. And there going through is Chris Rosenberger. Comes down towards the Virage du Camp. Stefan Rattel's Audi a lap down, but Le Patron continues, making sure that the customers are getting their track time and maximising what's available to him as well. It's a rare opportunity to switch off from dealing with teams, thinking about regulations, thinking about calendars, thinking about keeping a business going, and just go racing. So Stefan is going to make the most of his final stint of the season. Up towards the chicane he goes. Leonardo Gurini is only 9/10ths quicker in the first sector, but he's over a second faster in the second sector. So maybe 5 seconds pullback was, or nearly 5 seconds on that last lap was a bit of a blip, but he's certainly still pushing hard, no question about that. Now the Lamborghinis battle on. Cyril Lima versus Cedric Lima. And how's this into Nissan contest going to pan out? Cedric is the quicker of the two. That's a Pro-Am car as against the Am entry of Cyril Lima, so that should change before the end. In fact, I think it's changed already, hasn't it? Yes. Cedric Lima has gone through. There he is. So pushing hard. The quicker of the two Lima brothers comes up towards the timing line. Cedric goes by. Now, can he catch Gurini before the end? The answer is going to be no. He's 18 seconds back. Again, on that last lap, though, the margin between Patterson and Gurini, well, Mark Patterson's lap was a 2:15. Leonardo Gurini did 2 minutes 10, so another best part of 4 seconds, 5 seconds pull back. Two minutes 10.8 plays 2:15.1. Gap continues to tumble between them there with 4 minutes to go. Is Cedric Lima. Leonardo Gurini still leads that AM contest. Through turns the Lamborghini. But as far as the race lead is concerned, Mark Patterson looking oh so strong. He is clear. Even though the margin is coming down to Leonardo Gurini, it's still a big enough margin to keep him safe to the end of the race. Patterson, Gurini, and then the Limers, plural, Rosenberger and Gulinx round out the top 6. Aurelius Rustica's repaired Porsche down in 8th. It's on the track, it's going. It's clearly not quite as healthy as he would have liked, but it's in the race. The Porsche has always been a bit of an understeery car, in fact, and that whack I don't think would have helped in that department from race 1. But this car comes up to the end of lap number 21. It's going to squeeze 2 more laps out of the race, I would offer you. Mark Patterson then up towards the timing line, goes through, and as he accelerates past the pits, lapping in 2 minutes 15s, there's 2 more laps to go for that car. And he could crawl round for one of those laps and still keep the lead, I think, because 17 seconds plus is still a mighty advantage to have. 14 seconds that gap comes down to. But Leonardo Gurini hustling on for a class win with Cyril Lima and Chris Rosenberger, Hans Stuck's cars, 2nd and 3rd in the queue. There is the Leonardo Gurini Porsche. We'll see in a moment what the first sector time is going to be like. It was a 36.7 for the Audi, and as the Porsche breaks the beam, great noise as ever from a Porsche, it is a 36.3, so 4/10ths pull back. Of course, Gurini might think differently about needing to chase the high-class Audi and just go for his class win. Don't jeopardise that by the heroics, but those are the lights he's chasing, so he can see what the gap is. Actually, that sort of foreshortens it a little bit because that section of the Mistral is quite a long one, but the gap is down a little bit, but not by masses on this first sector, that's for sure. So with time for 1 more lap at the end of this, up towards Senior goes the race leader, and out of the right-hander as into it comes Leonardo Guarini's Porsche, which has just gained another second in that middle sector. So there's no doubt about it, Mark Patterson is being ultra cautious. Gurini, yes, he's pushing, but he's not doing personal best. I mean, he's not necessarily upping his game more than it was upped early in the race. This is just Mark Patterson, I think, being very, very, very cautious and making sure he gets to the end. He's got to stay ahead of Gulinx, and he's leading, and Gulinx is 6th overall, so that job is being done. So the team telling Mark Patterson absolutely the right things. Just keep out of trouble, don't make mistakes, drive well within yourself, and he's doing just that. Cedric Lima hustles on as well. As Gurini is quicker than Patterson, so Lima is quicker than both, in the first sector at least, on this lap. Drops a little in the middle. Over the line has gone the leader, then he's on his last lap of the race now, as through comes Leonardo Gurini, and there for 3rd place, Cedric Lima. Up to the timing line comes the Lamborghini, runs out wide. Doesn't seem to have quite the same illumination that the cars ahead of him do, but there is 33 Audi on its last lap, and a checkered flag beckons, a win beckons, and a championship beckons at the end of this. It will be the 5th win for Anders Feuerbach and for Mark Patterson, and it has been an utterly, I was going to say dominant win, crushing win, I think is probably better, because that car has never been headed, never looked likely to be headed, and has just blitzed everybody else over the course of this race. A mighty job done by Anders Feuerbach early on in the race. Up there towards the chicane it goes, and another look at the Lamborghini versus Audi situation here. 32 that was. Jaromir Jirik getting up past Peter Gulinx. That Audi has lost out at that corner quite a lot to Lamborghinis, it feels like, in the course of this race. And there's another example of it. But Peter Gulinks with an Audi that just does not seem to have the pace this weekend as the high-class racing car. He's not so much limping home, but he's a very, very distant 7th overall now. Still 3rd in class, but a very distant 3rd in class. But 33 Audi, Mark Patterson at the wheel of it. Accelerates now up towards the line. The checkered flag awaits, and so too does the championship title. The Fanatec GT2 European Series final race is going to be won by Anders Fjordbach and Mark Patterson in the high-class racing Audi. It is going to be a 5th victory of the season. This the most dominant yet, as battles have raged behind but never against it. But up towards the line, the checkered flag awaits, and the Fanatec GT2 European Series champions are Anders Fjordbach and Mark Patterson. It is a race win, the 5th of the year for the combination of drivers that has just been the benchmark all the way through the championship season. So 2nd over the line, Leonardo Gurini. He wins the AM contest. Cedric Lima takes 3rd, assuming it was Cedric Lima all the time. In that 2nd stint, it wasn't Julien Piguet carrying on because the lap times to begin with looked so good. And then for 4th place, Cyril Lima ahead of Chris Rosenberger and Hans Stuck, and 6th, Jaromir Jirik and Han Hoylin. So that the order at the end of the race. Championship won by Anders Fjordbach and by Mark Patterson. Great job done by them as the rest of the field come through. Jaromir Jirik is going to be 6th over the line, although the incident between him and Peter Gulinks from down at the final corner is being noted by the officials. That'll be looked at. But for the race winners, Mark Patterson and Anders Fjordbach, the winning margin in the end, 9 seconds. And that enough to secure the championship for the high-class racing drivers at the end of not only a great season, but an exemplary race. Just the perfect job done there. Mighty, mighty effort indeed. So Mark Patterson and Anders Fjordbach score honours, and Leonardo Gurini, perhaps helped by the absence from that race after his dramas on the first lap of Christoph Ulrich. Leonardo Gurini takes a maiden AM win. Cedric Lima and Julien Piguet 3rd. We've still got cars pouring over the line, haven't we? Including there the Porsche of Aurelius Rustiger and Michael Vergas for 8th place, for 9th place, Stefan Larsen. But there is a very, very happy new champion, Anders Fjordbach.
Yeah, I was hit in the first corner from behind, and it was over. Yeah.
Christoph Ulrich saying well done, the AM champ, explaining he was hit in the first corner and that was his race over, but celebrating with the Pro-Am champion. And Valérie Guillon, the championship manager, is there ready to get the drivers required for the podium as swiftly as, and also to hand out the regulation winners' caps as well. So in the Pro-Am competition, there's the winning car, the champions, Mark Patterson and Anders Fjordbach, from in 2nd place in Pro-Am, 63 of Cedric Lima and Julien Piguet, and 3rd in Pro-Am, Peter Gulinks and Bert Langin. But the AMs, Leonardo Gurini, the winner from Cyril Lima, and then Chris Rosenberger and Hans Stuck. I think they've been on the podium in AM pretty much in every race, but never a win, which is perhaps the biggest shame of all. So there, the AM winner, giving some cheer for the LP Racing team, comes down the pit road. That being the Porsche of Leonardo Gurini. And there, Anders Fjordbach goes to celebrate with Mark Patterson, and the party will begin, I think, as the two of them embrace, and high-class racing having done a great job with that Audi.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, man.
So, champagne sprayed. Meant to be on the podium, but Mark Patterson and Anders Fjordbach celebrate a title that at one point looked like it was getting away from them.
Come in the picture.
Mark Patterson says to Anders Fjordbach, come here. And the celebrations begin. So the very first Fanatec GT2 European Series title goes to Mark Patterson and to Anders Fjordbach. And that might have been a dominant win to the eye, but perhaps a huge amount of pressure on Mark Patterson to make sure that he brought that car home safe and sound. And the lap times may have been dropping away, but he did not put a wheel wrong. He did exactly what was required of him and came through to win the race, and with it to win the championship. And Bert Langin and Peter Gulinks will be the frustrated drivers that miss out, but they gave it a good shot, and of course still took race wins during the course of the season. Right, let's, as we wait for the podium, have a look at race 2. The highlights of race 2, a totally dark circuit for the second night race of the season, and away from pole position, blasting into the race lead was Anders Fjordbach as it all kicked off behind. Tapped sideways was Christoph Ulrich, but Brabham delayed, and it was an engine issue that caused that car eventually to make 2 pit stops, the second of which was its final one, the car dropping out of the race. So Anders Fjordbach suddenly became the dominant driver. He just drove away from the field, built up the advantage. As for second place, Bert Langin was rather busy trying to fend off the challenge coming from behind. It was Julien Piguet who was doing the attacking. Julien Piguet fought long and hard to try to find a way through. Eventually, he was able to make a move toward the very end of his stint, but it took some doing. And by that stage, if you like, the damage had been done because the race leader was already long gone. Battles raged on up and down the field as well. Hans Stuck trying to find a way up past Serdi Simini. There was contact between the two. Didn't look that bad, but it took Simini a long time to recover, and then with suspension damage, the car was out of the race. The pit stop window opened and the stops cycled through. Fjordbach relayed Mark Patterson. Julien Piguet came in to give way to Cedric Lima. Mark Patterson, for High Class Racing, taking over the leading car, getting ready to storm out on track as Leonardo Gurini led the AM competition coming into the pits, and he led it going out as well. And then for the second part of the race, although Cedric Lima chased after the leading Audi, he was too short on the pit stop. According to the officials, a stop-go penalty went the way of the Swiss driver, and so that very badly compromised his chances. But up front, Mark Patterson continued to hold sway in the lead of the race. Leonardo Gurini chased hard, but he could never get close enough. He just ran out of time. But he did win the AM category. As for the overall race win and the championship, Mark Patterson and Anders Fjordbach came home victorious. Cedric Lima and Julien Piguet's car then finishing third overall. Cedric Lima charging as hard as he could in that second stint. But a great job done by Mark Patterson and Anders Fjordbach. They've won the race, they've won the championship, and that was about as crushing a display of winning a race as you will find. And Anders Fjordbach delighted as the champagne was sprayed in the pit road. Anders Fjordbach and Mark Patterson, this year's champions. So let's have a look at the provisional results of that race. Mark Patterson and Anders Fjordbach, the winners, from Leonardo Gurini in second place, the AM winner. Cedric Lima and Julien Piguet taking third ahead of Cyril Lima, then Chris Rosenberger and Hans-Joachim Stuck fifth. Jaromir Erik and Huilin Han take sixth ahead of Peter Gulinks and Bert Langin, with Aurelius Rustica and Michael Vargas in eighth place overall. Ninth, Stefan Larsen and Maro Casadei, and Stefan Rattel and Luca Piri 10th. We lost, of course, Serdi Simini from that race, and we also lost Dennis Anderson and David Brabham early on. Dennis Anderson never got a chance to drive it in that one, and Christoph Ulrich also was an early retirement as well. So the drivers then will reflect on what has been a great season, and Mark Patterson and Anders Fjordbach, the outright winners of the championship, with Christoph Ulrich the AM champion. And we look forward to seeing more cars on track for Season 2 of the Fanatec GT2 European Series. From Paul Ricard, from David Addison, and from this year's championship, it's goodbye.